The Nationals had a slow offseason overall, but there's still a chance that they could be good. But for them to be good, these things need to happen.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, check us out over on Twitter. And of course, while you're at it, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course, the video version over on YouTube. And that is where you get your daily content of the Washington Nationals. A little bit later on in today's program, we will be discussing the Nationals dipping into the international market, and it's not down in Central America. The Nationals went over in Asia and signed a Japanese-born pitcher for the first time in the franchise's history. We'll talk about that news a little bit later on in today's program. Also, second segment, C.J. Abrams ended 2024 on a really bad note, and that is something that we discussed here time and time again, and now people are down on him, but you shouldn't be. This is still an all-star shortstop, and he's just 24 years old. We'll discuss that a little bit later on as we look ahead to 2025 with C.J. Abrams. But let's discuss this. The Nationals don't really have high expectations. You sitting there on your couch or wherever you're listening to this podcast might be thinking to yourself, well, here we go again. And by the way, you know what? That might happen. You might be right, but also you might be wrong because there are some things that could happen that might make the Nationals a competitive team in 2025. We'll discuss that after we tell you about today's sponsor, and today's sponsor is Gametime. And today's episode of Locked On Nationals is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So as we were saying, the Washington Nationals, they do have a chance in the year of 2025. Now, are we going out there saying that this is the best roster since 2019? I mean, I guess you can make that argument, maybe outside of 2021. But other than that, the Nationals are a very young, unproven team. Now, the good thing is they're unproven. And what I mean by that is you just don't know where this team will go. I think we have an idea of it, but there are still things that could happen this season that makes the Nationals competitive. And here are some of them. Number one, let's start off with this. You look around Major League Baseball. The Yankees, they've got Aaron Judge. The Dodgers, they've got Shohei Ohtani. The Atlanta Braves, they've got Ronald Acuna. This is a superstar team, or a superstar league, rather. The Nationals don't necessarily have a superstar this second, but you can have one breakout. James Wood is going to have a breakout season for the Washington Nationals in order to make them a playoff or a just good overall baseball team. Now, here's the good news. James Wood looks like a superstar at this point. Like, if you were to tell me that James Wood is going to be the best Washington Nationals player since Juan Soto, I would say absolutely. You're 100% correct. James Wood in his rookie season at 21 years old was really, really impressive in just pretty limited action, by the way. James Wood ended the season in his first full regular season with 9 home runs, 41 RBIs, and had a 781 OPS. Had a batting average of 264, got on base at a 354 clip as well. James Wood looks the part at this point, and he was also just 21 years old. If you're telling me that James Wood going into this season is going to have a big breakout year where he hits 30 home runs, has a 900 OPS, I would believe that. And these are things that will have to happen. The story around baseball at this point in time is, again, it's about your star. It is about your star who has power, who can play in the outfield, and who also is just a freak of nature. James Wood checks all three of those boxes right here in DC. The Rockville, Maryland native, he has superstar written all over him. You could easily make the case that James Wood is kind of like your big offseason acquisition. Now, if you're here every single day, you all know what I've been screaming about all offseason long. The Nationals, they need help. All the help that they can get. If it were up to me, I'd be going out there trying to sign Alex Bregman. I'd be out there trying to add a star pitcher, a Corbin Burns type, or a Max Fried, someone of that nature. But the Nationals did not do that. But that also does not mean that we will be a bad team because of these moves. Do I think it makes them a better chance of being bad? Absolutely. But James Wood could be at the forefront of this breakout. And in today's game, again, it is about having that star. James Wood could be the exact star that you need. Someone who hits for power. Someone who's 6'7", the Aaron Judge kind of build that you don't really see all too often in Major League Baseball. But James Wood has all the talent to take that next step up and to lead this team to be a potential postseason squad in October. That's how good James Wood can be. Now, will he develop to be that? I would bet my bottom dollar that he would, but it still has to be played out. But sitting here today, I feel really good about where James Wood is. And that's not just the only thing that has to happen or that could happen. You also have a top prospect in all of baseball with Dylan Cruz. Dylan Cruz, former number 2 overall pick back in 2023 out of LSU. We all knew he was going to make his debut this past season, and he did not disappoint. Dylan Cruz, while it wasn't the most impressive season, it was still really good in limited action. You saw all the tools on display here for Dylan. The hit tool, the power, the stolen base capability, solid outfield play. You can really kind of stick him anywhere and pinpoint any of his tools, and all of them are above average. That's what separated Dylan Cruz at LSU. Well, number one, he batted .400, and we all understand that. And he also did that with some power, and he could steal some bases. But he checks all the boxes for any Nationals team, by the way. He's about to turn 23 entering this season, and I feel really good about where Dylan Cruz sits today. Now, he's kind of in the same boat as far as James Wood goes. If the Nationals were to be good, you're going to obviously have to have James Wood turn out to be that star that you have all hoped for since having Juan Soto walk out the doors here. But also Dylan Cruz is in that same category. Dylan Cruz, by the way, could overall be the better player than James Wood with simply just the tools that he has. James Wood is not a better defender than Dylan Cruz. And also, I think Dylan Cruz is a smarter base runner overall who has the capabilities to steal more bases. And I also think the Nationals would want him to steal more bases than your star outfielder with James Wood. In only 119 at-bats this season, he stole 12 bases. He had a 641 OPS. Wasn't all too impressive, but he also had a couple of home runs. And I think Dylan Cruz, you saw the worst version of him. He ended the year on a pretty sour note in that last month, but even in that final game where he had a couple hits, that is kind of what we expect to see moving forward. Someone who's going to hit line drives, find the gaps, play good defense, play smart overall winning baseball, and that is what's going to drive this Nationals team into contention, in my opinion. Because you have this tandem between Dylan Cruz and James Wood, and as far as young outfielders go, there's really not many more exciting tandems than these two guys right here. And they're both just 22 years old. They have got a ton of ability. They have got that poise that you would like to see from your potential stars. I think the Nationals have found something with these guys. And I'm not here to tell you that this will happen. But if these things do happen, and along with some other things we're going to get to a little bit shortly here, the Nationals will be good. The third thing that we're going to have to see is I talk about this. Mike Rizzo even mentioned it over the weekend here in DC, the season ticket holders. You need to have an ace. And with that, this team right now doesn't really necessarily have that ace that you're like, I feel confident in him going out in Game 7 of the World Series. You don't have that at this point. So, similar to James Wood, and Dylan Cruz, I'm going to need Mackenzie Gore to break out and have that big year that we have all been waiting for. Over Mackenzie Gore's first 2 seasons with the Nationals, you saw the potential. You saw why he was such a highly regarded prospect for quite some time with the Padres. But he needs to have that breakout season that we have been waiting for. You need to have that season when you're striking out 10 to 11 guys, 12, 13 guys per 9 innings. The walk rate needs to come down. The mistakes that we have seen time and time again to kind of snowball down to having bad starts needs to finally fade away. This is year 3 now for Mackenzie Gore. He's gone through 2 seasons where he has been relatively healthy here. And now Mackenzie Gore needs to take that step up. He knows what it's like going up against the Braves multiple times a year. And the Phillies, and now even the New York Mets with Juan Soto. But Mackenzie Gore, if you are going to go on some magical carpet ride that we have seen the Commanders go on this season, then you're going to have Mackenzie Gore break out and finally be that stud, just ace-like pitcher that we have just been waiting for since trading away Max Scherzer and having Steven Strasburg go on the shelf. And that can't happen, by the way. But these things go into having a good overall season, and they're all, at the end of the day, what ifs. But I do think those 3 things are realistic. Now, will all 3 of those things happen? They could, but we all know the game. It's a hard one. And also, another 4th one that I'm going to throw in here, and it'll be a good segue into what we're going to be getting into next. Our shortstop, CJ Abrams, is going to have to be better defensively. And we've seen at times he makes those web gem plays. He makes some really solid plays, but overall, he's not all that consistent defensively. I want my shortstop making every single play. That is something that we saw with Trey Turner, who drastically improved over his years at shortstop defensively. You also saw him improve offensively as well. CJ Abrams was an all-star at the age of 23 this past season. Now he's 24. He's more mature. You'd think he probably learned his lesson from the casino incident this past year. But now it's time to have CJ Abrams fully break out. And I'm going to tell you why you should not be down on your potential star shortstop after we tell you guys about our friends over at Gametime. And of course, I can tell you this, attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. And of course, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets. And I recently used Gametime Picks to find tickets for an upcoming NFL playoff game. I can tell you this, I was looking at Super Bowl tickets. I was browsing through the deals with Simple, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The Super Deal is especially impressive, offering the best value for the event. The app features like seat views before you buy, an all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout. And of course, this made the experience much more smooth and reliable. And plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guaranteed gave me the peace of mind that I will find a potential Super Bowl ticket if the Commanders went there. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. As we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now let's talk about this real quick. CJ Abrams, someone that we just mentioned, had an all-star campaign from this last year, was a very bright spot on a pretty bad baseball team that, again, finished 71-91. You thought that they would win maybe 76 games at best, but that is where the Nationals were entering this season. Now you've got CJ Abrams, who, again, like the others, is entering a very big year and was coming off a relatively sticky wicket, to say, just talking about his casino incident and staying out. And it put a lot of Nationals fans, what's the opposite of ease? It put them in a bad spot with where CJ Abrams is. That's just a simple way to put it. Over the course of the first half of this season, though, CJ Abrams was a legit all-star. And the numbers are right here for you, by the way. And again, the first half in 89 games, right up until that all-star break, he was batting .270 with an .831 OPS. He stole 15 bags, which I thought would be more. He also hit 15 home runs in that stretch, something that I never even thought that he would hit 15 home runs in a season when he was a young 21-year-old here manning the shortstop position. But CJ Abrams has proven that, number one, he's got more power than what you anticipate. And number two, he has the ability to be an all-star and a silver slugger kind of batter at the shortstop position in the National League. That's the kind of potential that CJ Abrams has. Now, people are down on him, and I think we all know why. It was the end of the season because you all saw what he could be. And I think that is why I've seen it before. This is why I go into the season thinking that CJ Abrams will be just fine. And a lot of Nationals fans, they kind of cling on to the last second half of the year where he batted .200 with a .586 OPS. The power was seamlessly gone at any point that you ask him to have any power. It just went away. And he had a really harsh second half of the season. And ultimately, in the final week of the year, he was sent down to AAA after being out at a casino until 6 a.m. before a 1 p.m. game in Chicago. That is kind of what he has been known as. But I can speak for myself on this. I still feel as if CJ Abrams, while it's hard to sell that point at this stage, he is still a clubhouse leader. He is still someone who the younger guys actually go to still till this day. CJ Abrams will be just fine, in my opinion. I think it's a couple different things as to why Nationals fans are down on him, and we mentioned it. It's the casino in the second half of the season. The second half of the season, who knows what went wrong? Because there is a clear difference of where CJ Abrams was very good and where he wasn't. But also just kind of stretching into it here. He started off the first 3 months of the year just completely on fire. In the month of June, he had an 1127 OPS and batted .374 in that month. The first month in April had a 992 OPS and batted .295. It also had 7 home runs in the first month. He was amongst top 10 in home runs in the month of April. That's how good CJ Abrams was at one point this year. And then it all just fell off. He batted .177 in July, a .187 in August. In September, he ramped it back up for about his season average at a .766 OPS and batted .271 on the year. That is kind of more what I expect rather than a .284 slug in the month of July and also a .572 OPS in that same month. I choose to believe that CJ Abrams will get to that point again. The all-star that we all saw, the all-star that we all said that this guy is going to be the future of this team. And while we're at it, extend the kid. Yes, extend him immediately, but that's not what we're going to talk about right now. You should not be down on CJ Abrams. Some phrase that I have always said about prospects, or really just about anything in general with this baseball team, is I won't believe Bigfoot if I don't see it for myself. I've seen the production from CJ Abrams over 90 games in a year. I've seen it from the second half in 2023, where he put up terrific numbers and ended that year on a great note. We have seen CJ Abrams be great. And by the way, if we're just going to get in the semantics of it, he was great this year for way more than what he was bad for. Now, those few months where he was really bad in July and in August, it's hard to ignore that. But also, that's just 2 months out of a big old marathon. CJ Abrams was better than what his numbers even said, in my opinion. Now, he still needs to improve, and really on the defensive side of things here. Because I like my shortstop to be solid and a sure thing defensively. CJ Abrams isn't really close to being a sure thing defensively. In fact, you could probably make some cases for him not being a shortstop long term. But sitting here today, If you were to ask me, is CJ Abrams going to be your shortstop of the future, or will he just kind of flare out and not really be anything in the majors? He's going to be my shortstop of the future. And I still think we should have our eyes set on that goal here, because this is someone who will make a difference down the line. This is someone where Mike Rizzo can take a victory lap over and say, this is going to be someone who will help the Nationals push back into postseason contention. And CJ Abrams, he's going to be a star in my opinion. I'm still not down on him, but it has to happen this year. Because if he has a down year with the way that it ended this past season, who knows what his future holds? Is it going to be over at second base? Is it going to be them trying to move him into the outfield? Who knows? But I can tell you this, I'm buying my stock into CJ Abrams, even more so than some of the other young guys on this team. Even more so than your top prospects with Brady House down in the minors and guys like that. I've seen it with CJ Abrams up at this big league level, and he has done it consistently. So we'll see where the Nationals lie moving forward. But thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. The Nationals, they did something that they have never done in the history of this organization. We'll get to that after we tell you guys about some of our friends. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And the Nationals, again, have done something that we have never seen from this organization, and it is long overdue. But they have signed an international prospect right at the buzzer this past week from Japan, and that comes in the form of left-handed pitcher. And I will say I apologize for not knowing the pronunciation. I've not seen anyone consistent with it so far. Shinosuke Ogasawara. We have made finally a signing over from Japan, and this is the right move, by the way. If you kind of get into it, the left-handed pitcher who is 27 years old, coming over from Japan, someone who's put up really good numbers, by the way, over the course of a really productive career over in Japan. And this is finally something where the Nationals have done. They have done this. And by the way, let's get into it here. They have signed him to a 2-year deal. Decent money overall. Nothing too crazy. But at 27 years old, a left-handed pitcher, Mike Rizzo expects for him to compete this year for a starting rotation spot. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, in my opinion, because it's a left-handed pitcher yet again. You've got Mackenzie Gore, who will be in the rotation. You've got Jake Irvin. Other than that, there are guys like DJ Hers, who I certainly see as a starter, and I want the Nationals to use him as like really their number 3 starter. You also have Trevor Williams, Michael Soroka, and now you've got Ogasawara, who is in this picture as well. And then also you got Josiah Gray coming back from Tommy John, who you saw throwing the other day. And you also have Cade Cavalli. At some point, you would like to think that he would be a starting pitcher again. But now the Nationals, they have legit depth at the upper level of the minor leagues and also up in the majors. How will the Nationals use him from Japan? Will they just go in there and say, you're going to be in the bullpen for now? And also, they could option him to AAA, which I don't really see happening at this point, but they easily could decide to do that. But the Nationals, they're going to have to make decisions, and they're going to have to make decisions relatively early on. Because I would like to see what this kid can do. He put up really good numbers. Again, coming off a year where he had a 3.12 ERA in 24 starts, where he had 144 in the third innings pitch. His strikeout rate did go down, but also his walk rate got cut basically by 1 walk per 9 innings. This guy is going to pound the zone with a high fastball that Mike Rizzo thinks will work up in the major leagues, and only gave up 9 home runs in those 24 starts. Now, you're going to be going up against a lot better talent, especially here in the NL East. But I think that the Nationals, they may have found something with this kid. And we'll see what they decide to do. Is he going to be a bullpen guy, or will he actually really compete for that starting rotation spot? We'll just have to see what the Nationals decide to do. But it is exciting nonetheless, because they have finally dipped in that market that they should have been doing for the last decade plus. So finally, they do it. And we got ourselves someone who also could be in this rotation moving forward. So thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, and we will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.